Imagine this. It is the middle of night somewhere above the Persian Gulf. A huge American bomber, engines thundering at 35,000 FT, deploys a weapon the planet has never witnessed in battle before. A 5,000 lb steel tube, the dimensions of a compact vehicle, falls from the plane and accelerates toward the Iranian shoreline at supersonic velocity. GPS directs it with millimeter accuracy. It does not detonate on impact. It burrows through reinforced concrete, through compacted soil, through the ceiling of a fortified subterranean passage where Iran has concealed the very rockets it has been deploying to strangle the world's most critical shipping channel, and then deep below ground, where no sunlight penetrates, it explodes. Iran assumed it had the Strait of Hormuz secured down permanently. The U.S. just demonstrated the government catastrophically mistaken. Welcome back to Bradley Madden, where we analyze the most significant military and geopolitical events on the globe right now. And right now, what is unfolding in and around the Strait of Hormuz is not merely a regional dispute. It is a struggle for the worldwide economy itself. We are discussing a channel through which approximately 20% of the world's maritime oil supply travels every single day. And for the recent several weeks, that movement has been diminished to virtually nothing because Iran thought it could hold the globe captive from behind its shoreline missile installations. On March 17th, the United States delivered that assumption a 5,000 lb response. We are going to guide you through precisely what occurred, precisely what munition the U.S. deployed, and why it is so remarkable, and precisely what follows next, because the narrative is far from finished. If you are not yet subscribed to Bradley Madden, now is the moment. Press that subscribe button and activate notifications, because the circumstances in the Strait of Hormuz are shifting by the hour, and we will be here reporting every development as it unfolds. Let us begin with the fundamentals, because you need to comprehend what the United States actually accomplished on March 17th to recognize why it carries such significance. U.S. Central Command, commonly referred to as CENTCOM, posted to X in the late hours of that evening with a declaration that was characteristically brief but absolutely massive in its ramifications. Hours ago, CENTCOM declared U.S. forces effectively deployed multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions against fortified Iranian missile installations along Iran's shoreline near the Strait of Hormuz. The command noted that the Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles stored in those locations had presented a direct threat to global commerce in the strait. Direct, concise, and historically meaningful in ways that most individuals have not yet completely understood. To comprehend why this carries weight, you need to understand what Iran has been executing in the Strait of Hormuz. Since Operation Epic Fury commenced on February 28th, the Islamic Republic has implemented a multi-layered approach of naval hostility that has been ruthlessly successful. Speedcraft, essentially militarized racing boats equipped with sea-skimming rockets, have been racing in and out of shipping corridors to intimidate any commercial ship courageous enough to attempt the passage. Drones have been dispatched in waves to overwhelm protections. Sea mines have been planted across the channel. And the United States intelligence apparatus now estimates that there are at minimum a dozen Iranian mines presently positioned in the strait, according to coverage by CBS News. But as the Telegraph has detailed in depth, it is the anti-ship cruise missiles that constitute the most serious long-term danger. Iran has established a considerable array of these armaments along its southern shore. The Qadr and Qadr missiles installed on road mobile vehicles can engage targets at distances between 12 and 186 miles. That distance spans the complete stretch of the Strait of Hormuz from one side to the other. And then there is the Abu Mahdi cruise missile, which can strike targets up to 621 miles distant, broadening Iran's potential engagement range far beyond the strait itself. Include in this the Hormuz 2 Khalij anti-ship ballistic missiles, both with distances of 186 miles and fitted with satellite guidance for pursuing moving vessels. And you have a danger landscape of remarkable intricacy and destructiveness. Here is the challenge the U.S. has been confronting. You can engage missiles in the open. You can pursue road-mobile platforms from the sky. The A-10 Warthog ground attack aircraft, that iconic Cold War veteran, has been performing exactly that, eliminating Iranian speedboats with impressive effectiveness. CENTCOM has reported that American troops have now neutralized 120 Iranian maritime craft and 44 mine-deploying vessels since the campaign started. But the most threatening firing sites are not in the open. They are concealed underground, carved into hillsides, strengthened with concrete, buried beneath layers of compacted soil. And you cannot penetrate those positions with a conventional bomb. You cannot penetrate them with a standard missile attack. To penetrate those positions, you need something completely different. That is where the GBU-72 becomes part of the narrative. Before we examine the remarkable features of this munition, and they are remarkable, let us be precise about the magnitude of the chaos Iran has generated. As documented by Australia's ABC News, at least 20 vessels have been targeted in and around the Strait of Hormuz since Operation Epic Fury commenced on February 28th. Before the conflict, more than 100 ships per day were passing through the strait. As of the drafting of this script, the New York Times documented that the number has dropped to just 3 or 4 vessels risking the transit each day. Neil Crosby, director of oil studies at the energy research company Sparta, expressed the astonishment of this situation perfectly when he informed the New York Times, "The standard assumption of everybody, including myself, up to this juncture was consistently, it's too significant to collapse. It will never shut. Western or partner naval forces will never permit this to occur. It has occurred. Oil costs have climbed above $100 per barrel numerous times since the hostilities started." The International Energy Agency has characterized the interruption as the greatest supply disruption in the history of the petroleum market. Iran estimated that this financial hardship would compel the United States to terminate Operation Epic Fury. That estimation was an error. Now let us discuss the GBU-72 because this munition warrants your complete attention. Its official name is the GBU-72 will be Advanced 5K Penetrator. It was created by the United States Air Force starting in 2017 expressly to supersede the aging GBU-28, a 5,000 lb bunker destroyer that has been operational since the 1991 Gulf War. The Air Force revealed the new armament publicly in October 2021 when it declared that a GBU-72 had been effectively deployed from an F-15E Strike Eagle during trials at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. That trial program, which featured the first-ever mounting, flight, and deployment of the armament, was characterized by the Air Force as a total achievement. James Culleton, the GBU-72's program director, stated at the time that destructiveness is anticipated to be considerably greater compared to comparable previous munitions such as the GBU-28. How much greater? The previous GBU-28 could bore through 15 ft of reinforced concrete and roughly 150 ft of soil before exploding. According to defense commentator Chris Osborne, writing for 1945, the GBU-72 is capable of driving through 100 feet of earth and 22 feet of solid concrete before its timed fuse initiates the blast. That capability represents a significant advancement in boring capacity. And importantly, unlike multi-purpose bombs that are engineered to shatter on impact, the GBU-72's extended steel casing must stay structurally sound long enough to penetrate through layers of fortification before unleashing its complete explosive energy underground. That is the technical challenge, and the United States has mastered it. The war zone has documented that the GBU-72 pairs a BLU-138B boring warhead with a version of the Joint Direct Attack Munition, or JDAM guidance package, the same navigation system the U.S. employs for its 2,000 lb bunker destroyers. That guidance package combines GPS and inertial positioning systems, enabling the bomb to be deployed from standoff distance, meaning the plane releasing it does not need to pass directly above the objective. That matters tremendously when you are functioning in contested skies, and in an additional element that reflects the munitions' engineering heritage, the war zone observes that the GBU-72's warhead seems to incorporate the same blend of AFX-757 explosives and PBXN-109 present in the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, the 30,000 lb bomb that the U.S. has previously deployed against Iran's Talecan-2 nuclear installation. The U.S. has discovered an explosive composition that functions, and it has applied it throughout its complete bunker-destroying inventory. Now, here is where it becomes historically noteworthy. Retired Marine intelligence officer and national security commentator Hal Keir informed Fox News that, to his understanding, the operation on March 17th constituted the inaugural combat deployment of the GBU-72 in history. "Not that I'm cognizant of," Keir responded, when questioned whether it had been utilized previously, adding, "This is the initial occasion I believe this specific one had been deployed." The Aviationist, one of the most esteemed military aviation journals in the world, concurred with that evaluation. However, the war zone introduced an important clarification. CBS News had earlier documented in May 2024 that 3 U.S. officials verified the GBU-72 had been utilized against Houthi subterranean facilities in Yemen during the period when the Iranian-supported faction was attacking Red Sea shipping. Air and Space Forces magazine subsequently verified that March 17th constituted the inaugural deployment of the GBU-72 in Operation Epic Fury, specifically while recognizing the 2024 Yemen precedent. What this indicates, if the 2024 account is correct, is that Iran has had some secondary experience with the effects of the GBU-72 previously through its Houthi affiliate. It could not defeat the bomb in Yemen. It could not defeat it on its own territory in March 2026. The transportation of these munitions to Iran's subterranean missile installations is itself a narrative worth recounting. The GBU-72 is presently approved for deployment on 2 airframes, the F-15E Strike Eagle and the B-1B Lancer strategic bomber. The F-15E, which is stationed across multiple installations within CENTCOM's operational region, can transport 1 GBU-72 on its belly pylon without sacrificing its wing fuel tanks. The B-1B Lancer, by comparison, can transport up to 12 GBU-72s simultaneously. Flight monitoring information referenced by numerous sources, including evaluation published by Defense Geek and Zona Militar, documented 2 B-1B missions leaving RAF Fairford in the United Kingdom on March 17th. Plane tracking information indicated 2 of the aircraft traveling between Cyprus and Israel at roughly 13:30 UTC, heading toward Iran, and arriving back to Fairford at 22:20 UTC. A schedule that corresponds to the CENTCOM announcement precisely. RBC Ukraine hypothesizes that the U.S. may have released as many as 48 GBU-72s across the Strait of Hormuz missile locations in that single mission. If that number is even approximately correct, the B-1Bs would have been critical to providing that quantity of ordnance. The round trip from RAF Fairford to the Strait of Hormuz is approximately 8,500 kilometers or 5,281 miles, which demonstrates the logistical scope of the complete campaign. And here is what we are really discussing when it involves the objectives. The purpose of these operations was not merely to eliminate the rockets themselves, as CENTCOM and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Air Force General Dan Kane, verified in a March 19th Pentagon media briefing. The chief objectives were the subterranean storage complexes and the passages linking those complexes to Iran's shoreline firing stations. The U.S. military released 5,000 lb penetrator munitions into the underground storage complexes, housing coastal defense cruise rockets and other supporting gear. Kane stated, You do not need to eliminate every rocket in Iran's stockpile. You do not need to track down every road mobile platform. What you need to do is demolish the passages and block the exits through which Iran transfers those platforms to their launch spots. Eliminate the facilities and the rockets become worthless. They are formidable armaments, but without a method to bring them into the open, they are merely very costly metal resting underground. The GBU-72 has converted Iran's most meticulously built defensive system into a costly burden. It is worth stopping here to place all of this in the wider framework of Operation Epic Fury. The U.S. has not been depending exclusively on the GBU-72. It has utilized an escalating hierarchy of ordnance across Iran since the campaign commenced on February 28. 2,000 LB GBU-31BJ JDAM bunker destroyers have been in regular deployment, with observers capturing enormous reserves of these munitions at RAF Fairford. The 30,000 LB massive ordnance penetrator, a munition so enormous it can only be transported by the B-2 Spirit stealth aircraft, has already been utilized against the Talokan 2 nuclear installation. And according to Alma Research and Education Center, the joint U.S. and Israeli operations, including Israel's Operation Roaring Lion, have now weakened approximately 85% of Iran's aerial defense system. That weakening is not coincidental. It is a prerequisite. The GBU-72 is a precision weapon. It functions most efficiently when adversary air protections have been neutralized, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has officially confirmed that that situation now prevails in Iran. So where does this position the Strait of Hormuz? This is where the narrative becomes even more remarkable and even more dynamic. On March 22nd, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper released a declaration that eliminated any uncertainty about American goals. Our aviators across the board are actively pursuing dangers as well, locating and neutralizing objectives in real time, Cooper stated, and we will not cease targeting these objectives. Cooper characterized the U.S. as focused on dismantling every component of Iran's ability to endanger free trade in the Strait. On the identical day, Reuters documented that Iran had declared it was opening the strait to all ships, except those it considered adversary-connected. Iran's government spokesperson Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf countered American pressure on X, cautioning that if Iran's energy stations were attacked, the vital systems, power systems, and petroleum installations throughout the area will be regarded legitimate objectives and will be eliminated in an irreparable fashion, and the cost of petroleum will stay elevated for a long duration. And then President Donald Trump intensified to a degree that startled the global community. On March 22nd, he posted on Truth Social that Iran had 48 hours to completely reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or the United States would, in his terms, devastate Iran's domestic energy stations, beginning with the biggest one first. The political and financial reverberations were instantaneous. Markets fluctuated dramatically. Oil costs jumped, then declined. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed over 1,000 points when Trump subsequently declared a suspension in the timeline. Iran's reaction was combative. State broadcasting proclaimed that Trump had withdrawn out of terror of Iran's retaliation. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps cautioned that if energy stations were targeted, Iran would respond against the energy stations of neighboring nations providing power to American installations. Iranian government-affiliated outlets documented that the country's legislature was preparing to institute charges denominated in yuan for vessels passing through the strait. But behind the bluster, something was changing. As documented by ABC News, Trump prolonged his original 48-hour timeline twice. First by 5 days, referencing what he characterized as very constructive and fruitful discussions with Iran. Then on Thursday, March 26th, he prolonged it again by 10 days to April 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, indicating that the prolongation came at the petition of the Iranian administration. Discussions are continuing. Trump posted on Truth Social, and despite inaccurate claims to the opposite by the dishonest news outlets and others, they are proceeding very well. As documented by Euronews and ABC News, Iran's reply to the U.S. 15-point diplomatic proposal was transmitted through mediators on Wednesday, March 25th. Iran's Tasnim news service, referencing an unidentified source, said the reply demanded an end to U.S. and Israeli assaults on Iran and on Tehran-backed factions across the area, the disbursement of conflict compensation, and recognition for Iran's authority over the Strait of Hormuz. Those conditions position Tehran far beyond anything included in the American proposal. The distance between the two parties remains enormous. Iran's Foreign Affairs Ministry simultaneously rejected that any direct conversations had occurred, characterizing Trump's prolongation part of measures to lower fuel costs and gain time to execute his military strategies. Meanwhile, as NPR documented, Israeli troops were intensifying their attacks on Iranian weapons factories in Isfahan and other metropolitan areas, seemingly rushing to inflict as much destruction as feasible before any potential truce. Israel's defense chief verified that the IRGC Navy's leader, Commodore Alireza Tangsiri, the individual directly accountable for coordinating the naval obstruction in the Strait of Hormuz, had been eliminated in an overnight Israeli operation. Iran did not promptly confirm the elimination. What does all of this amount to? It amounts to a circumstance of exceptional peril and exceptional possibility simultaneously. The GBU-72 operations have fundamentally shifted the equilibrium of force along the Strait of Hormuz shoreline. Iran's most carefully engineered and most menacing armament network, the fortified subterranean rocket-firing infrastructure it invested years and tremendous resources constructing, has been revealed as susceptible to American aerial capability in ways that Tehran almost assuredly did not foresee. The mental impact of that revelation should not be minimized. If Iran cannot safeguard what is stored deep below ground, what precisely can it safeguard? And yet the hostilities are far from settled. The strait remains effectively shut to most global commerce. Oil costs remain heightened. The political discussions are delicate and disputed. Iran is still warning, still launching rockets at Israel and Gulf nations, still distributing mines in the Channel. The B-1Bs are still at RAF Fairford. Admiral Cooper has declared the U.S. will not cease. And with the April 6th timeline now established, the globe is observing to determine whether statecraft or aerial capability will ultimately decide the destiny of the world's most strategically vital stretch of ocean. Here is what we understand for certain right now. The GBU-72 has been deployed in battle. It delivered. It demolished what Iran invested years constructing and defending. And if the political window shuts, if the April 6th timeline lapses without a settlement, there is every justification to anticipate that more of those 5,000-pound subterranean messengers will locate their way to the objectives that the U.S. military's intelligence resources are presently cataloging across the Iranian shoreline. There is one additional aspect to this narrative that merits your consideration. An unanticipated participant has joined the Strait of Hormuz situation: Ukraine. As the U.S. and Gulf nations contend with Iranian drone dangers in and around the strait, Ukrainian interceptor drone capabilities developed in 3 years of warfare against Russian aerial assaults is surfacing as a potential asset to the effort. Ukraine has created advanced combat-tested proficiency in drone neutralization that could prove exceptionally applicable in the Hormuz environment. We will be reporting on that advancement in a specialized video very soon. This is exactly the type of reporting that Bradley Madden is designed to provide. The strategic framework, the engineering specifics, the international implications. If you want to remain informed of every advancement in Operation Epic Fury and the wider Middle East situation, ensure you are subscribed to Bradley Madden with alerts activated. We release content consistently, and we distill these involved situations so that you never have to review 10 reports to grasp what is truly occurring. Because here is the essential takeaway. The globe is shifting quickly and meaningfully around the Strait of Hormuz, a munition that nobody had witnessed deployed in battle before March 17th has just transformed the security equation across an entire territory. The world's most vital petroleum passage is under active discussion between the world's most formidable armed forces and a government that is concurrently defiant and cornered, and a countdown is progressing toward April 6th. We will naturally keep you informed every step of the journey.